The gentle rocking of the train usually soothed 6-month-old Lucas to sleep, but not today. Rachel Taylor bounced her fussy infant gently on her lap, desperately trying to quiet his whimpers before they escalated into full-blown wails. She'd already endured 3 disapproving glances from the businessman across the aisle, his eyes darting between her crying baby and his open laptop. "Shh, it's okay, sweetie," she whispered, wiping a tear from her own cheek with her shoulder. She hadn't meant to cry, but exhaustion had a way of dismantling her defenses. 3 job rejections in one day, rent due in a week, and now Lucas wouldn't stop crying. The Boston-bound train rumbled through the Massachusetts countryside as late afternoon shadows stretched across the autumn landscape. Rachel had spent her last bit of savings on this train ticket for an interview at a restaurant that had seemed promising, until the manager explained they couldn't accommodate her childcare constraints. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Rachel shifted Lucas to her other arm and fished out the device, expecting another text from her neighbor asking when she'd be home to watch her kids as promised. Instead, an unknown number appeared on her screen. "I'm sitting behind you. Is there anything I can do to help?" Rachel's body tensed. She slowly turned around, scanning the seats behind her. 3 rows back, a woman in a charcoal suit looked up from her phone and gave a small, uncertain smile. Rachel turned back around, heart pounding. Who was this person? How did she get her number? Another text arrived. "I'm sorry if that seemed intrusive. I'm Janet Porter, CEO of Horizon Solutions. The conductor mentioned you were having a difficult day when I boarded. I asked if he knew how to reach you." Rachel's mind raced. Horizon Solutions was one of the fastest-growing tech companies on the East Coast. She'd read about Janet Porter in business magazines, a self-made success story who'd built her company from nothing after dropping out of college. "I don't need charity," Rachel typed back, pride overwhelming her momentary curiosity. Lucas let out another cry, louder this time. The businessman across the aisle sighed audibly. "Not offering charity, just a mom who's been where you are. Maybe some coffee and conversation at the dining car. My treat, no strings." Rachel hesitated. Every instinct told her to decline, to handle this alone as she'd handled everything since Thomas had walked out when she was 7 months pregnant. But Lucas was getting more restless, and the cramped seating area was becoming increasingly uncomfortable under the judgmental stares. "Fine," she replied, "but I can buy my own coffee." Gathering her diaper bag and struggling to her feet with Lucas on her hip, Rachel made her way toward the dining car. She found an empty table and settled in, positioning Lucas on her lap. A few minutes later, the woman from 3 rows back appeared in the doorway. In person, Janet Porter wasn't what Rachel expected. Magazine photos showed a polished executive with a perfect smile and designer clothes. This Janet looked tired around the eyes, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, though her suit was undeniably expensive. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," Janet said, sliding into the seat across from Rachel. "Your little one is adorable." "He's usually not this fussy," Rachel replied defensively. "I remember those days." Janet smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. "My Zoe was a nightmare on public transportation. Something about the engine noise drove her crazy until she was almost 2. The server came by, and despite Rachel's protests, Janet ordered 2 coffees and a selection of snacks. "So," Rachel said when they were alone again, "why exactly is the CEO of Horizon Solutions texting random crying women on trains?" Janet's laugh was unexpected, a rich, unrestrained sound. "Fair question. The honest answer? I recognize something in you." "What? Desperation?" Rachel regretted the words as soon as they left her mouth. "Determination," Janet corrected. "You're trying to soothe your baby while hiding your own tears. That takes strength most people don't understand." Rachel felt her defenses beginning to crumble. "Well, determination doesn't pay the rent." "No, it doesn't," Janet agreed, "which is why I'm curious about your story." There was something disarming about Janet's directness. Over the next 20 minutes, as Lucas finally settled into sleep against her chest, Rachel found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone. Not even her sister in Phoenix. How Thomas had cheated, then left when confronted. How she'd finished her business administration degree online while 8 months pregnant. How each promising job interview fell apart when childcare issues arose. "You completed your degree while pregnant and alone?" Janet seemed genuinely impressed. "What was your focus?" "Marketing and data analytics," Rachel replied. I was working as a junior analyst before. Everything happened. Janet's expression changed subtly. Data analytics, she repeated, pulling out her phone. Would you mind looking at something for me? She slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a spreadsheet filled with numbers and metrics that Rachel immediately recognized as customer acquisition data. Our marketing team has been struggling with some campaign performance issues, Janet explained. They've been analyzing this data for weeks with no insights. Rachel studied the numbers, shifting Lucas to her shoulder as she scrolled through the spreadsheet. The pattern jumped out almost immediately. Your highest conversion rates are all coming from targeted ads running between 8 p.m. and midnight, but you're allocating most of your budget to daytime advertising, Rachel pointed out. And there's a clear difference in regional performance that nobody's addressing in the budget allocation. Janet's eyes widened slightly. She took the phone back, studied it for a moment, then looked up at Rachel with newfound interest. I've had 3 analysts review this data. None of them caught that. The train announcement system crackled to life, announcing their approach to Boston's South Station in 30 minutes. Rachel, Janet said, putting her phone away, would you be open to discussing a potential opportunity at Horizon? Rachel felt a surge of hope, quickly tempered by reality. I have a 6-month-old. I can't afford reliable childcare, and I need flexible hours that most companies won't. We have an on-site childcare center, Janet interrupted, and we've been implementing remote work options for the past year. Rachel stared at her, waiting for the catch. Why would you offer me anything? You don't know me. Janet's expression softened. 15 years ago, I was on a bus with my 2-year-old daughter, crying because I'd just been rejected from my 3rd job interview that week. A woman sat next to me and changed my life by giving me a chance. The server returned with their order. As Janet stirred her coffee, she looked directly at Rachel. Sometimes we need someone to see our value when we're too exhausted to showcase it properly. I'm not promising anything, but I'd like you to come in tomorrow for a proper interview. As Lucas stirred against her chest, Rachel felt something she hadn't experienced in months, possibility. But as the train rumbled closer to Boston, a question nagged at her. Why would a CEO take such personal interest in a random stranger? The next morning, Rachel stood outside the gleaming glass headquarters of Horizon Solutions, Lucas secured against her chest in his carrier. The building towered over the surrounding structures in Boston's Seaport district, its curved facade reflecting the morning sunlight. Rachel checked her phone again. 8:45 a.m. Her interview was scheduled for 9. She'd spent half the night researching Janet Porter and Horizon Solutions, trying to make sense of their unexpected encounter. The company had grown from a small data analytics firm to a major player in business intelligence software in just over a decade. Janet's story was compelling, a college dropout who'd built her empire while raising a daughter alone. The business world lauded her as an innovator and a champion for working parents. Yet, something about the situation still felt too convenient, too perfect. People like Rachel didn't just stumble into opportunities with industry leaders on random train rides. Are we really doing this, Lucas? She whispered to her sleeping son. He responded with a tiny sigh, his warm weight both comforting and grounding. The security guard at the reception desk smiled when she approached. You must be Rachel Taylor. Ms. Porter mentioned you'd have your little one with you. He handed her a visitor badge and directed her to the elevators. 19th floor, someone will meet you there. The elevator doors opened to reveal a bright, open workspace. Modern furniture in soft blues and greens created a welcoming atmosphere, while glass-walled meeting rooms lined the perimeter. Several employees glanced up as she entered, their expressions curious but not unwelcoming. Rachel, you made it. Janet appeared from a hallway, dressed in a navy pantsuit that made her look more like the polished executive from magazine covers. How was your night? Better than most, Rachel admitted. Though I spent a good portion of it wondering if this was some elaborate prank. Janet laughed. Understandable. Come on, I'll give you a quick tour before we talk. As they walked through the office, Janet pointed out various departments and introduced Rachel to several team members. What struck Rachel most was how Janet knew everyone by name, asking about specific projects or family members. And this, Janet said finally, stopping at a colorful space filled with toys, books, and small tables, is the treehouse. Through a large glass wall, Rachel could see about a dozen children of various ages engaged in activities with several caregivers. A separate area was designated for infants, where two women were gently rocking babies. Our on-site childcare center, Janet explained. It's open to all employees at no cost. We have certified early childhood educators and a 3.1 ratio for infants. Rachel's throat tightened. The monthly cost of quality childcare in Boston had been her biggest obstacle in returning to work. It's amazing, she managed. Janet smiled. It was the first thing I implemented when we moved to this building. Come on, let's talk in my office. Janet's corner office was surprisingly modest, functional rather than ostentatious. She gestured for Rachel to take a seat on a comfortable couch rather than across her desk, creating a less formal atmosphere. Would you like to put Lucas down? He's welcome to stay with you, but if you'd prefer, our infant room supervisor could look after him during our conversation. Rachel hesitated. She hadn't left Lucas with anyone other than her neighbor since he was born. You can check on him any time, Janet added, seeming to understand her reluctance. And we can pause this conversation at any point if you need to get him. After a moment's consideration, Rachel agreed. A friendly woman named Maggie came to escort Lucas, who was beginning to wake, to the infant room. Rachel handed over his diaper bag with detailed instructions about his bottle and preferences, which Maggie noted patiently. When they were alone again, Janet's expression became more businesslike. So, Rachel Taylor, tell me about your professional experience before Lucas. For the next 30 minutes, Rachel outlined her education and work history. She had graduated with honors from UMass with a degree in business administration, specializing in marketing analytics. Her previous position had been at a mid-sized marketing firm where she'd managed client acquisition data and helped optimize campaign performance. And you were let go when they found out you were pregnant? Janet asked bluntly. Rachel shifted uncomfortably. They cited company restructuring, but the timing was suspicious. I was the only one in my department affected. Unfortunately common, Janet sighed, and illegal, though nearly impossible to prove. I considered fighting it, Rachel admitted, but with no savings and a baby on the way, I couldn't afford a legal battle. Janet nodded, making notes on her tablet. What about your technical skills? The data analysis you did yesterday was impressive. I'm proficient in most analytics platforms. Python, R, SQL for data management. I've worked with Tableau and Power BI for visualization. As Rachel continued outlining her skill set, she noticed Janet's expression growing increasingly pleased. When she finished, Janet set down her tablet. Rachel, I'm going to be direct. We have an opening on our marketing analytics team that I think you'd be perfect for. The position involves analyzing campaign performance data and making optimization recommendations. Essentially what you demonstrated yesterday on the train, but on a larger scale. Rachel's pulse quickened. That sounds ideal, actually. The role offers flexible hours and the option to work remotely 2 days a week. Starting salary is $85,000 with full benefits, including health insurance that would cover both you and Lucas. The figure made Rachel's breath catch. It was nearly double what she'd been making before. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why me? There must be hundreds of qualified candidates without the complications I bring. Janet leaned forward, her expression serious. Do you know what our company mission statement is? Rachel shook her head. Technology that serves humanity, built by humans who understand life. We don't just want technical skills, Rachel. We need people who bring diverse perspectives and life experiences. She paused. Besides, your analysis yesterday saved us potentially hundreds of thousands in misallocated marketing spend. That's value I'd be foolish to ignore. It sounded reasonable, yet something still nagged at Rachel. I appreciate the opportunity, but this all feels too perfect, too coincidental. The CEO of a major company just happens to sit behind me on a train and offer me my dream job the next day? A flicker of something, discomfort, crossed Janet's face. You're right, she said after a moment. There's something I haven't told you. Rachel tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I recognized your name when the conductor mentioned it, Janet admitted. Rachel Taylor from UMass, graduated 3 years ago with a focus in marketing analytics. How would you know that? Because your resume crossed my desk 6 months ago. You applied for a position here before Lucas was born. Rachel's confusion must have shown on her face, because Janet continued quickly. You were actually our top candidate. We tried to contact you for an interview, but all our emails and calls went unanswered. Eventually, We had to move on to other applicants. The realization hit Rachel like a physical blow. That was when everything happened with Thomas. I was staying with my sister in Phoenix for a few weeks. I must have missed the communications. Janet nodded. When I saw you on the train and heard your name, I wondered if you might be the same Rachel Taylor. Your analysis of our data confirmed it. Rachel sat back, processing this information. So yesterday wasn't just random kindness. No, Janet admitted. It was partly recognition of talent we'd already identified. But, she added quickly, that doesn't make the opportunity any less genuine. As Rachel considered this revelation, a cry emanated from Janet's computer speaker, a baby monitor showing the infant room. Lucas was awake and fussing. We should take a break, Janet suggested. Go check on him, take some time to think about the offer. The position is yours if you want it, but I understand if you need time to consider. As Rachel stood to go comfort her son, the pieces started falling into place. The coincidence wasn't quite as miraculous as it had seemed, yet the opportunity remained real. But as she walked toward the childcare center, another thought occurred to her. What else might Janet Porter not be telling her? Rachel spent her first 3 weeks at Horizon Solutions in a whirlwind of new routines. Each morning she and Lucas arrived at the gleaming office tower by 8:30. She would settle him in the treehouse, where he was already becoming a favorite among the caregivers, before heading to her desk in the marketing analytics department. The work was challenging and engaging, exactly what she'd hoped for when completing her degree. Her team members were welcoming, though she occasionally caught curious glances. A few times, conversations stopped abruptly when she approached the break room. Rachel tried to ignore these moments, focusing instead on proving her worth through her work. And she was excelling. Her first major project, restructuring the company's digital marketing budget based on the insights she'd identified on the train, had already shown a 22% increase in conversion rates. Janet had personally congratulated her in an all-hands meeting, something Rachel's colleagues mentioned was rare for the CEO. She doesn't usually track junior analyst projects, commented Derek, her team lead, after the meeting. You must have made quite an impression. Rachel had smiled non-committally, but the observation fed her lingering unease. Despite the dream job, perfect childcare situation, and generous salary, something still felt off about the whole situation. Janet had been nothing but professional since that first interview, maintaining a friendly but appropriate distance. Their interactions were limited to group settings or brief exchanges when Janet visited their department. Yet Rachel often felt the CEO's eyes on her during company gatherings, watching with an intensity that seemed to go beyond professional interest. On Thursday of her 4th week, Rachel stayed late to complete a time-sensitive analysis. Lucas was content in the treehouse, which remained open until 7 p.m. for parents working extended hours. The office had gradually emptied until only a few determined workers remained scattered throughout the open floor plan. As Rachel finished inputting her final calculations, a notification popped up on her screen, an all-staff email announcing the company's annual autumn gala, scheduled for the following month. The event was a fundraiser for Horizon's charitable foundation, which supported various initiatives for single parents and children in need. Rachel scrolled through the details, noting that employees were encouraged to bring guests and that childcare would be provided. As she reached the bottom of the email, she noticed a folder link labeled Previous Year's Highlights. Curious about what to expect, Rachel clicked through to find photographs from past galas. She scrolled through images of elegant decorations, smiling employees, and charitable presentations. In a photo from 3 years ago, she spotted Janet on stage presenting an oversized check to a woman representing a family shelter. Rachel was about to close the folder when another photo caught her eye, a group shot of Horizon's executive team from 5 years earlier. Janet stood in the center, younger but unmistakable, and beside her, with his arm casually draped over her shoulder, was a face Rachel knew all too well: Thomas, her ex, Lucas's father. Rachel's hands froze over her keyboard as shock coursed through her body. Thomas had worked at Horizon, with Janet. The photo caption identified him as Thomas Mercer, VP of Business Development. The pieces suddenly clicked together with sickening clarity. Janet hadn't recognized Rachel's name from a resume. She'd recognized it because Thomas had talked about her, because Janet knew Thomas. Rachel quickly opened a browser and searched Thomas Mercer Horizon Solutions, finding several industry articles, mentioning his role at the company until approximately 2 years ago when he had apparently left to join a competitor in Seattle. Her mind raced. Had Janet hired her out of guilt? Pity? Some misguided attempt to make amends for Thomas's behavior? Or was there something else entirely at play? Rachel gathered her things quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she shut down her computer. She needed to pick up Lucas and go home. She needed space to think. As she stood, a voice came from behind her. "Working late?" Rachel turned to find Janet standing there, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. "Just finishing up the European market analysis," Rachel managed, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Janet nodded approvingly. "I saw the preliminary numbers. Impressive work." "Thank you." Rachel hesitated, the photograph burning in her mind. Should she confront Janet now? Demand answers? Before she could decide, Janet glanced at her watch. "I'm heading to the treehouse to pick up my niece. Maya's mother had a last-minute business trip. Would you like to walk with me to get Lucas?" A niece, not a daughter. Another detail that didn't match what Janet had initially shared. "Actually," Rachel said, making a split-second decision, "there's something I'd like to ask you first." Janet's expression remained neutral, but Rachel noticed a slight tension in her shoulders. "Of course." "How well did you know Thomas Mercer?" The question hung in the air between them. Janet's composure slipped for just a moment, a flash of something unreadable crossing her features, before she regained control. "Let's talk in my office," she said quietly. Rachel followed Janet to her corner office, her mind churning with possibilities. Had Janet and Thomas been involved? Was this all some elaborate scheme? Once inside, Janet closed the door and gestured for Rachel to sit, but Rachel remained standing. "Thomas Mercer was Horizon's VP of Business Development for nearly 7 years, Janet said, her voice measured. "He left the company about 2 years ago." "And?" Rachel prompted. Janet sighed, setting her portfolio on her desk. "And he's my younger brother." The revelation hit Rachel like a physical blow. She gripped the back of the nearest chair to steady herself. "Your brother?" she repeated incredulously. "Thomas is your brother?" "Half-brother, technically. Same father, different mothers." Janet's expression had hardened. "I should have told you from the beginning. I apologize for the deception." Rachel's mind struggled to process this new information. "So on the train, you knew exactly who I was. You knew I was carrying your nephew." "Yes." Janet's admission was quiet but firm. "I recognized you from photos Thomas had shown me." Anger surged through Rachel. "Was this job some kind of family guilt offering? Keep the inconvenient mother of your brother's child from making trouble?" "No." Janet's response was sharp. "Thomas doesn't know you're here. He has no idea I've even met you." "Then why?" Rachel demanded. "Why the elaborate setup? Why not just be honest from the start?" Janet moved to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline now glittering with early evening lights. When she turned back, her professional facade had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "Because I wanted to know what kind of person you were before I told you the truth, before I decided whether to tell you everything." "Everything?" Rachel repeated. "What else could there possibly be?" Janet took a deep breath. "Thomas didn't just leave you, Rachel. He was asked to leave Horizon. There were incidents, complaints from female employees, inappropriate relationships with subordinates. It wasn't the first time, but I was determined it would be the last, at least at my company." Rachel felt as if the floor was tilting beneath her. Thomas's sudden departure, his quick relocation across the country, it made a terrible kind of sense now. "I confronted him," Janet continued, "told him I couldn't protect him anymore. That's when he mentioned you. Said he'd ended things with some pregnant girlfriend because he wasn't ready for that responsibility. He didn't even say your name. The casual cruelty of it stung even now, months later. "So you what? Tracked me down?" "No, I honestly thought I'd never meet you." Janet's expression softened slightly. "Then there you were on that train, with his child. I recognized you immediately." "And decided to play fairy godmother?" Rachel's voice was bitter. "I decided to offer an opportunity to someone who deserved it. Your resume had impressed our team months ago. That part was true. And your analysis on the train confirmed your talent." Janet stepped closer. "Yes, I felt a responsibility toward you and Lucas because of my brother's actions, but I hired you because you're qualified, Rachel." Rachel shook her head, unconvinced. "You should have told me. Would you have accepted the job if you'd known? The question gave Rachel pause. Would she have? Or would pride have driven her to reject anything connected to Thomas? Before she could answer, a gentle knock came at the door. Maggie from the treehouse stood there with Lucas in her arms and a small girl, presumably Janet's niece, by her side. "Sorry to interrupt," Maggie said, "but we're closing up, and these two are the last ones." Lucas reached for Rachel, his familiar weight in her arms, providing a momentary anchor in the storm of revelations. The little girl slipped her hand into Janet's, looking up at her with clear adoration. "Maya," Janet said to the child, "this is Rachel and her baby Lucas." The girl smiled shyly. "Hi." As Rachel looked between Janet, Maya, and Lucas, the full implications of the situation struck her. This little girl was Lucas's cousin. Janet was Lucas's aunt. They were, in some complicated way, family. "We should continue this conversation tomorrow," Janet said quietly. "When we've both had time to think." Rachel nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Tomorrow," she agreed, turning to leave with Lucas secure in her arms. As she reached the door, Janet called after her, "Rachel, for what it's worth, Thomas doesn't know about you being here, but he's been asking about Lucas. He's been reaching out claiming he wants to make things right." Rachel froze. "And what did you tell him?" Janet's expression was unreadable. "Nothing yet. I thought that decision should be yours." Rachel barely slept that night. She lay awake in her small apartment, watching Lucas breathe peacefully in his crib, his tiny chest rising and falling in a rhythm that usually calmed her. Tonight, it couldn't quiet her racing thoughts. Janet was Thomas's sister. Lucas had an aunt, a cousin, an extended family he knew nothing about, and somewhere in Seattle, Thomas was apparently having second thoughts about abandoning them. By morning, exhaustion had crystallized into resolve. Rachel dressed carefully in her most professional outfit, a navy pencil skirt and cream blouse she'd splurged on with her first Horizon paycheck. After dropping Lucas at the treehouse, where he gurgled happily at the sight of his favorite caregiver, Rachel made her way to the 19th floor. Janet's assistant looked up as Rachel approached. "She's expecting you. Go right in." Janet stood by the window, coffee in hand, looking as though she'd had as little sleep as Rachel. She gestured to a small conference table rather than her desk, neutral territory. "I owe you an apology," Janet began once they were seated. "Regardless of my intentions, I should have been transparent from the start." Rachel acknowledged this with a nod. "Yes, you should have, but that's not why I'm here this morning." She placed a folder on the table between them, her own analysis, conducted late into the night after Lucas had fallen asleep. "What's this?" Janet asked, opening the folder. "My project proposal for expanding Horizon's parental support initiatives. Based on my research, we could increase retention of employees with young children by approximately 34% by implementing 3 key programs." Janet blinked in surprise, scanning the document. "This is comprehensive. But Rachel, given yesterday's revelations, I thought you might be tendering your resignation." "I considered it," Rachel admitted. "But then I realized something. Walking away would be the easy choice. The expected choice." She leaned forward, meeting Janet's gaze directly. "I've spent months letting Thomas's actions define my choices. Leaving a job I love because of another complicated connection to him would just continue that pattern." A hint of respect flickered in Janet's eyes. "So you're staying?" "On 3 conditions," Rachel clarified. "First, complete transparency from now on. No more secrets." Janet nodded. "Fair enough." "Second, I want to lead this project." Rachel tapped the folder. "Not because I'm Lucas's mother or your brother's ex, but because I'm the most qualified person to develop it. I'd need to review the proposal fully, but based on what I'm seeing, I'm inclined to agree," Janet said, continuing to scan the document. "And the third condition?" Rachel took a deep breath. "I want to meet Maya properly, and I want Lucas to know his cousin. Not because of Thomas, but because family connections matter. The good ones, anyway." Something softened in Janet's expression. "Maya would like that. She's been curious about the baby since she saw him yesterday." Rachel nodded, a small weight lifting from her chest. "Then we have an agreement." "We do." Janet extended her hand, which Rachel shook firmly. "Now about Thomas. I'm not ready to discuss him, Rachel interrupted. That's a decision for another day. Janet accepted this with a respectful nod. Understood. In the meantime, would you walk me through your proposal? These childcare partnership ideas are particularly interesting. For the next hour, they discussed Rachel's project in detail, their conversation gradually shifting from strictly professional to something more comfortable. As Janet shared insights from her own experiences building family-friendly policies, Rachel began to see glimpses of the person behind the CEO facade, someone who, despite her flaws, genuinely cared about creating a workplace where parents could thrive. You know, Janet said as they wrapped up, Maya has been asking to visit the Children's Museum this weekend. Lucas might be too young to appreciate it fully, but you both would be welcome to join us. The invitation hung in the air, not a professional courtesy, but a personal one. A small step toward a different kind of relationship. I'd like that, Rachel found herself saying. Thank you. 3 months later, Rachel stood at the edge of Horizon's rooftop terrace, watching as staff and their families enjoyed the company's holiday party. Snow fell gently over Boston, the city lights twinkling through the flakes like distant stars. The parental support initiative she'd proposed had been approved and launched to company-wide acclaim. Already, applications from candidates with young children had increased by 22%, and employee satisfaction scores were at their highest in years. Next month, she would present the program to Horizon's board of directors with a proposal to expand it further. Quite a view, isn't it? Janet joined her at the railing, 2 mugs of hot chocolate in hand. She offered one to Rachel. It's beautiful, Rachel agreed, accepting the warm mug gratefully. Have you seen Lucas and Maya? They were with the face painter last time I checked. Janet smiled. Current status. Maya has transformed into a snow leopard and is teaching Lucas to roar, though he's more interested in grabbing the whiskers painted on her cheeks. Rachel laughed, the sound coming easily now. The past months had brought an unexpected friendship with Janet, not without complications, but genuine nonetheless. Weekly dinners with Maya had become a tradition, and Lucas lit up whenever he saw his cousin and aunt. I received another email from Thomas yesterday, Janet said after a moment. He's persisting in his requests to connect with Lucas. Rachel nodded, having expected this. Thomas's attempts at contact had become more frequent as the holidays approached. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And? Janet asked, careful to keep her tone neutral. And I think it's time I responded, Rachel said, not for his sake, but for Lucas. He deserves to know his father, even if that relationship has limitations. Janet studied her for a moment. That's remarkably generous, given everything. Rachel shrugged slightly. It's not generosity, it's pragmatism. Keeping Thomas away completely would only make Lucas curious as he grows up. Better to establish boundaries now, on my terms. Have I mentioned lately how impressed I am by you? Janet said, a rare note of admiration in her voice. Only in yesterday's department meeting, when you called my analysis exemplary, Rachel replied with a small smile. Well, it bears repeating. Janet raised her mug in a small toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Rachel echoed, clinking her mug against Janet's. From across the terrace, a small voice called out, Mummy, Aunt Janet, look! They turned to see Maya rushing toward them, holding Lucas's hand as he toddled unsteadily beside her. At nearly 10 months old, he had just begun taking his first steps, and Maya had appointed herself his official walking coach. He's doing it all by himself, Maya announced proudly as they approached. Lucas beamed up at Rachel, his face partially painted as a blue butterfly, taking another wobbly step before reaching for her. Rachel knelt to scoop him up, her heart full as she pressed a kiss to his forehead. Look at you, my brave boy. Over Lucas's head, her eyes met Janet's, and a silent understanding passed between them. The past months hadn't erased the complicated circumstances that had brought them together, but they had transformed those circumstances into something neither of them had expected. A chosen family, built on truth rather than obligation. As the snow continued to fall softly around them, Rachel held her son close, surrounded by the life she'd built from determination and second chances. Whatever came next, conversations with Thomas, new challenges at work, the everyday trials of raising a child alone, she would face it with the strength she'd always had and the support she'd found in unexpected places. Come on, Janet said, gesturing toward the indoor portion of the party. "I think it's time for the gift exchange, and Maya has been bursting with excitement over the present she picked for Lucas." "We wouldn't miss it," Rachel replied, shifting Lucas to her hip and taking Maya's outstretched hand. Together, they walked back toward the warmth and light, leaving behind the shadows of the past and stepping into the brightness of a future none of them could have imagined that tearful day on the train, a future built not on perfect circumstances, but on the messy, beautiful reality of humans finding connection in the most unexpected ways.